Hello everyone, it's Ong here. In this video, I'll be taking you guys through the Usefulness Practice 1 practice. This is on the Chinese factories. If you guys are not sure where you can find this, you can find this on Google Classroom. It's the item right at the top under Classwork, under Current Material, Usefulness Question Paper. Okay. What we'll do in this video is to take us through the new question that we have been studying in Term 1. It's a new source-based question. It is on question 3. How useful is this source as evidence on doing business in China? Okay, so in this video, what I'll do is I'll take you through several things. Firstly, I will help to explain the background information. I'll look specifically at sources B, C, and D because these are the ones most relevant to this question, on question 3, on the usefulness of source D. Okay, feel free to skip ahead to the relevant parts of the video if you already are confident about understanding the sources or the BI. So let's take us through the background information. It is important to read the background information because this brief description gives us an exposure to the different issues that are involved in this case study. So as we read this, the big question that we're thinking about in this case study is whether companies should continue to open their factories in China. Okay, what are the advantages or disadvantages of doing so? What are the advantages or disadvantages of opening their factories in China? Is China a very good place because it's cheap, or is it a very expensive place to do business? Okay. So in this background information, what we'll see is China's transformation to the world factory. The world factory here means that it basically produces the goods for the rest of the world. It's well known, and the country has been an important player in the global economy for a long time now. China was initially a minor player. Minor player means it wasn't very important on the global manufacturing stage, but since opening up its huge population and resources to the world, it is now trusted as a hub. That means everybody wants to come to China. All these companies want to go there to produce goods like clothes, phones, computers, and so on and so forth. Okay. The important thing I want to stress here is that China offers low cost. In other words, it is cheap to do business in China. Now, if everybody is going to do business in China, how would other countries react to this? Okay, what this would mean is that companies are shifting out of their countries and moving to China to do business. Okay, so how do other countries respond? Other countries are similarly opening themselves up and attracting foreign companies to set up their businesses by offering lower costs. On the other hand, some countries like the US and European countries have responded to China's dominance by increasing taxes for Chinese-made goods and focusing on high-tech manufacturing in the hopes that companies find them more attractive for their factories. So what's going on here? Taxes here are placed by the government on companies. Okay, so they will charge them a certain amount of money for doing business in a certain country. Now, what they do is to discourage companies, we increase tax. To encourage companies to come, we lower tax, right? Lower tax. Because if we lower tax, then the idea is that it's cheaper to do business and then the company can do better. And yep, so these are what you should be taking out of the background information. Now, let's look at source B. Okay, what are the big ideas we get from source B? So whenever we read the source, we start off with the provenance, the description of the source. So this is adapted from an article by Business News website published in 2021. It's possible that labor-intensive manufacturing. Now, what on earth is labor-intensive manufacturing? Okay, here, labor refers to human physical labor. It means people are the ones doing the clothes manufacturing, they're the ones sewing the parts, they're the ones building the machines. Okay, intensive means that it's mainly using. Okay, so this kind of manufacturing mainly uses physical human labor rather than machines. Okay, so let's see what it says. It's possible that labor-intensive manufacturing could remain in China but undergo great changes. Technology offers the promise of robots doing the tiring work while humans concentrate on more skilled aspects, meaning we replace human beings with computers, with robots who can do the same kind of work. Okay, China is in fact one of the rising global leaders in using industrial robots. But we mainly see this in sectors such as cars and electronics only, meaning other sectors like the clothing line, they don't use robots. We don't really see technology being used for low-cost goods, perhaps because of China's large supply of cheap labor. Now, what does this mean? China's large supply of cheap labor, it means that rather than spend money investing in technology, China would rather use cheap human physical labor. Okay? Because it costs less to hire a human worker than it costs to invest in a machine. Okay? And they can do this because they have the largest population of $1.4 billion. So many companies still find it difficult and expensive to abandon China. What does this mean? It means that they would rather stay in China to do business. Stay in China to do business. Okay, why? Because it's expensive to go anywhere else. Anywhere else I need to invest in robots. Why not just go do work in China where I can rely on the Chinese workers? Also, businesses say that China's manufacturing facilities are unmatched and the goods are made at the lowest cost. Okay, so we see the big idea here is that it's easy to do business, easy or cheap to do business in China. Okay, so that concludes source B. Now, I'll move on to talk about source C. So, source C is produced by the Council on Foreign Relations in 2019. It's an independent organization that reports on government policies from all around the world. Now, what does it say about doing business in China? So, this is what it says. In 2015, the Chinese government launched Made in China 2025. This is like a government policy, which is a state-led industrial policy that seeks to make China dominant in global high-tech manufacturing. So this is the aim of the policy. We want to increase China's technology in manufacturing, in making of goods. The program aims to use government subsidies. Subsidies means like they provide money to companies. They promote state-owned companies. For example, like in Singapore, we try to encourage people to use, like say, Singtel, okay, a state-owned company or state-linked company, and encourage technological innovation to catch up with Western countries who are ahead in terms of technology. So over here, the big idea is the government is doing a lot. Chinese government, okay, GOVT for short, is doing a lot to help China businesses. Okay, that's the big idea. Now, specifically, what is the government doing? The government increased direct support for industries part of this Made in China 2025 plan through state funding. That means they provide some money. Low interest loans, meaning if a company needed to borrow some money, they can take it at low interest. They don't need to pay so much money. They give subsidies and reduce taxes for companies. Wow, okay, so according to this, it seems like the Chinese government is really doing a lot, right? It seems that if you were a businessman, you are a Chinese company, you will want to stay in China. The exact amount is unclear, but some estimates put the likely amount in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Means billions of dollars are going into supporting Chinese businesses. Why are they doing this? Because China's leaders are worried as more and more companies are setting up in other countries. They decide to leave China for other countries. The government is doing this to help their people. Okay. So once again, big idea of source C. Big idea is China is doing a lot to help the China businesses. What are some examples? Examples are giving funding and giving low interest loans to the companies. So that's what source C is about. Now, let me talk about source D. Now, who is source D by? Source D is published from an interview from the owner of Fuyao Glass, Mr. Cao De-Wang, published in 2018. Fuyao Glass is a Chinese company which makes glass for vehicles. Now, this is the important part. It is one of the first few Chinese companies to open a factory in the US. Now, this part is confusing, right? Why would they want to go overseas? Based on the sources we've seen so far, it seems that it's cheap to do business in China, and it seems that the Chinese government is providing help for Chinese businesses. So you would be curious, why did this guy, Mr. Cao, go to the US to set up business? So this is what he says. I sat down and really began to calculate the cost of doing business in the US. After some research, I found that the tax rates, meaning how much the government tax you, how much the government taxes you in the US are much lower than that of China. although labor costs are half as costly in China. Okay, I want you guys to highlight this. What does this mean? It means that it's still cheap to use human labor to produce things. Okay, what does that sound like? It sounds familiar, or it sounds similar to source B. Okay, labor costs are half as costly in China, and we calculate that overall the total cost of doing business in China is 4% more than in the US. So the first part tells you it's cheap to use human labor, but when you calculate other costs like tax, it's even more expensive in China than overseas. Now, this is what the owner says. I just want to remind the Chinese government that they will lose the support of the people given the lack of financial aid offered to companies who invest in China. Can you please highlight this? Okay, he's saying if the Chinese government doesn't give more financial aid to companies, then the people will be very unhappy. Some people said that I ran away to the US, but where was I running to? I'm Chinese. I'm merely doing my part for my country as an entrepreneur. Now, let's focus on this part. According to this owner, Mr. Cao, he says that the Chinese government is not giving enough support to the Chinese companies. Enough support to Chinese companies. Now, this seems to contradict source C, right? They're saying opposite things. In source D, they say that they're not giving enough support, but according to source C, it says that the Chinese government is doing a lot to help the China businesses. So in source B, you have parts which are similar to other sources like source B, and parts which are contradicting other sources like source C. Okay, hopefully this video helps you to understand the sources a little bit better.